Thought I'd make a video. I really do hope that my mother is. Well, I know she'll benefit from it. What I have to say, because I don't. It's hard for me to understand why they could have taken my mother away from me for so many years and have her twin pose as her. And it's heart-wrenching. It's very heart-wrenching to me. Like it's like a pain that, like, because I know that she was always asking for my help. And it's astounding what I did to try to survive with her. And I get thrown out of the picture for 20 years to help Keno from 97.9 Beat because he's Kenneth and let's feel sorry for him next. And his dad and his mother, Sarah, his family did this to my mother and me and Julian. Especially to me, Frankie and Julian. It's so vengeful, it's hard for me to be able to grasp the atrocity of the preparation of evil. Because the preparation is where the evil was in the entire time of this. Because it was so calculated and knowing that we're trying to get away with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, that it's hard for me to grasp how, a parasite could do such a thing to such an innocent person and innocent kids because they wanted entertainment and drama in their life and they wanted to protect Ken and the white supremacy. But like I said, I'm going to be hopefully, be making some more videos about my mother, what I remember about her, like things that she liked. One of the things that I used to always see in the bathtub when I was a kid, growing up, Julian can verify this, so can Frankie, is we used to have, my mother used to use pink bar soap, and they're just hitting my chest again, right now to the crucifix. I just felt them. And so my mother used to purchase, I think it was Dove, the little bird on there, Dove, and it was a pink soap my mother always had in the bathtub that she used for her, because, it's my mother. And Dial was the soap that my dad used to always purchase for himself, which is a really good soap. It's very dry. It works pretty good if you work out a lot of time, but it was the yellow Dial bar soap. But my mother, every time we went into the, we in our home or in our shower or bathtub, my mother always used Pantene Pro-V. Is a very common shampoo my mother used to use. The Protein V or Pantene V or something like that. I think y'all know what I'm talking about. The pearl-looking soap, and that's the one that I remember more than anything. And even when I was younger, Julian may be able to remember. Frankie can, but obviously the tragedies that has happened. My mother used to purchase a green soap. They don't make it anymore. But my mother was always very picky with the soap that she always used for us, and it's very selective. My mother was like always going to the market, and my mother always used her senses to what's good quality. And my mother would do that with cooking with food, not greasy, making sure it's not greasy, that it was a good oil or a good. And my mother was a very good cook, and she was very detailed like that. And so I think it comes from not being educated, where you have to use your senses. She'd open the bottle, smell it, and women have a sense of smell that's incredible, far greater than men. But my mother used to buy this green soap for us, for me, Frankie, and Julian. And I don't know if they continued to make it when Julian was born, but I'm pretty sure Julian might be able to remember. But it was for many, many years, it was a green soap, bottle of green, like a green, not a dark green, not a light green, but a green, a bottle of soap, about close to about from here to about here, close to not this full size, and it was just a basic, very generic bottle of soap, something like you would find on a dishwashing soap, and it had a picture of a blonde woman on there showering in a what looked like to be in like a pond, like a lily pond. That's what it looked like, or it looked like a lily pond, or like a some type of pond or something. But it looked like a lily pond with blonde hair. My mother used to use that, and she was like, "Oh, that that soap is real good." So that's what she used to use on us as kids. And and my mother wasn't fond of white people because she never really trusted very many of them. She just she knew that sometimes people would she just I've been around with all the racist things that happen. White supremacists go into McDonald's and shit, and they behave a certain way. My mother used to hate that shit. It's the same that she was talking about Sarah. It's his ego trip persona, very disinterested. But anyway, I could go into more details on that, but it doesn't even matter. But as far as and they hit my chest again. I know, because you're giving the orders of Jesus Christ. And they keep hitting a frequency into my chest and pointing me to the direction of the crucifix, and they just keep doing that repeatedly every time they're listening to my conversation. But I thought it was important for me to talk about. I'll hopefully try to bring up some other things, the things like oatmeal. I used to eat the melt oatmeal because I didn't like oatmeal. I had it a couple of times, and the way my mother used to eat oatmeal, she did eat oatmeal, but she always put like a real live cinnamon. She would put a real live cinnamon deal in there, and I remember that. So she would have that in there, and my mom didn't like, but occasionally had a bowl of oatmeal, and that's how she ate it. But I do remember I didn't like it very much after a couple times. I asked my mother if there was another option, and I definitely loved melt oatmeal, which is, I think it's called grits. Grits is something else. I don't know. I'm not familiar with too much of the breakfast world of that, but I have it right there. This melt oatmeal, which I made a video on before. I substituted because I didn't like the oatmeal very much at all. Frankie ate oatmeal. He enjoyed it, and I remember him telling me, he was like, "No, he liked the oatmeal." So they keep hitting my chest again, directing me to the crucifix, and it's this guy downstairs that's doing it. So I wanted to make a video. I'm going to be talking about, hopefully over periods of time, talk about the things that my mother used to like when we were in our house, little items she used to have. Oh, you know what my mother used to have when I was a kid as well? She used to have, when I was a kid growing up for many years, for up until I was maybe 9 years old, maybe I would say, I always remember we had a bottle of honey, and it was like old school honey. It wasn't like the honey looked like you bought at the store where it had stickers on there. And I don't know where my mother bought this, but it was a bottle of honey with honeycomb, the actual honeycomb in there. And my mother would always keep it on the front. My mother would always keep it on the window above the sink. Or we had a window above our sink before they had a garage built into it. But the honeycomb, my mother used to always have. She always had it on the top of the window. And I was like, "What's that?" "Oh, no, that's honey. It's a special occasion, So it's something my mother used to have. I still remember some of the magnets my mother used to have on the refrigerator, pictures of me and Frankie. She had the picture of me and Frankie where we're kind of embracing each other, and Frankie looks like he's trying to say something to the camera, and he's like, well, that picture was on a refrigerator for a very long time. And what else? Let's see, what else? But I thought, I know my mother has dementia and is not in a good mental place, and I know Frankie is. I don't believe Frankie is, but I think it's going to be best because y'all are going to be able to do the dividing, right? You're going to be able to do the dividing and say, because, obviously all the attention and all the stuff and all the money and all the death of my sister and everything that goes on to this, and I think it's good credible to how I remember some of the things that I think it's important for me to remember my mother. And, Um, so hopefully I'll make videos occasionally, talk about some of the things my mother used to like. Whether it was like certain bowls, plates that we used to have. I know when I went to her apartment, she still had the original. My mother's a really good souvenir. Believe this or not. Believe this or not, I know this sounds crazy, and I thought it was crazy. Okay, this is what mothers do, right? My mother, when I got circumcised, she kept the ring, the skin ring of my flesh, in a plastic bag. And she kept Frankie's. I don't know if she kept Julian's. I think she did keep Julian's. I think she did. Could have kept Julian's. But because we were all circumcised right at birth. My dad used to be a nurse, and he required it. Because my dad didn't get circumcised until he was in his 60s or late 50s. He was in his late 50s when my dad got circumcised. But since he was a nurse and he thought it was good health benefits, he wanted to make sure me, Frankie, and Julian were all circumcised, and we were. So my mother she asked the doctor, and she kept the ring. She kept the ring of the circumcised skin, like flesh, like human flesh. And I thought it was crazy. It was I thought my mother was like, holy smokes, you had this human matter in a bag you kept? That sounds crazy. Because my mother was a very souvenir person. She wanted to always keep things intact. And as a matter of fact, you know what she also had with me? My nails. When I was a little kid, the first time that the nails of a child ever grows enough and you first time have to trim them off, my mother got those toenail or the fingernails, and she put them in a plastic bag for souvenirs. That's how my mother was. So I think it's important for me to talk about, which she kept in our attic for quite some time. There was always stuff that we had in our attic. I never went up in our attic in our house, but maybe just in my entire life, believe it or not, I know it sounds crazy, because it was in Frankie's room. And I only went up in the attic, or looked in there probably a total of 6 or 7 times, just popping my head in, just looking. And I've only actually gone up there in the attic, I think twice. 2-3 times my entire life, 20 years that I lived there. I see my mother go upstairs before and get a Christmas tree, and where she did keep some Christmas lights, but it was too hard because our house was really small, so it was kind of hard to kind of put a lot of stuff in the attic. But it always looks pretty spooky to me. But I also wanted to talk about something else that was very disturbing. This was probably one of the, from what I can remember, I want to say this, I'm about 70% of this to say the accurate to what this feels, and I remember maybe about 80% is when I saw Ivan walking my sister many years ago, walking up and down the sidewalk. The last couple of times, I want to say at least last couple of times, she was completely limp, like almost looked lifeless. And I remember this. I think this was the very specific last day, because I knew how she walked and how she kind of carried, and she was sort of mobile. Because I had seen her before being walked, and she just start throwing up on the floor, right there on the floor, and as she was walking. And and this is before she started and gotten real sick. And she always seemed normal, or like the normal person of what I remember her being. And I remember Ivan picking her up this particular time, and I think this was the last time. I know this sounds really bad. It looked like he was picking up a dead body. And I'm I know this sounds really bad, but it looked like he was picking up a dead body. This little girl was completely limp. When I talk about limp, she was like almost like it was picking up an entirely dead body of a dead child. It did not look that she was able to really much try, if any, for herself. She might have had a little effort, but she looked completely lifeless, like just dead weight. And he was literally picking her up by her chest and trying to pick her head up as he was carrying her, and she was just completely out of, like, I don't even want to say that she ever picked up her head. And I was watching my own sister, lifeless body in front of me, as Ivan was trying to take care of her and give her her daily walk so she could take a look at things and get a different view of life. So I thought that was important. I've talked about this, but it's a very disturbing. I understand the thing that with me, I think this, I feel like the sense that I'm not supposed to talk about this because there's a lot of suffering that a lot of children and a lot of people are going through, and I'm being selfish just thinking of myself of bringing this topic up because people think I'm using it for an exchange because they thought that I did this to my mother on purpose or Frankie on purpose. And they're really just trying to benefit the Cooper family. That's in the white supremacy. And, it bothers me a lot because I know that these people don't want me to say anything, and they want to put the blame, and that's all they're doing, the garbage and everything on me, and then have me throw the trash out because they want to help. It's strictly white supremacy. This is all blonde hair, blue eye, white power, Ken Cooper, and then just say it's not because of Sarah Cooper. No, that's all white power over there. And so I think it's important for me to talk about because, I had seen her throw up a couple of times before she was walking because Ivan could tell you whether he could see me looking out the window. Ask Ivan this. Ivan will tell you, but I try not to stare too much because I think he was being bothered a little bit. Because I don't think Ivan knew that this was my sister, but didn't tell me. He never had one conversation with me ever saying that was your sister. I talked about sitting on the porch, and he once said, he goes, "Yeah, it's your mom's daughter." Or he said, "I don't think she cares." And he said it very lightly, like, I don't know, like testing me or something like that, but not like suspicious, but like he felt kind of guilty, like maybe I should say something. But he never once ever said anything. That's your sister right there. That's your sister right there. That's your biological sister, or even just half sister. Never told me this. So I tried not to stare because I didn't want to just there used to be kids. There used to be other kids. Annie Hoppan, Micah Martinkus, Drew Greenway, Chris Kemp probably saw a little girl walking, and that was my sister. And I remember one time, I don't know who it was, and he looked. I think it was also me. I was sort of on the front porch, and I was just looking. And I don't think he said it to me. I don't know who it was. It could have been. You could talk to him. And he was walking his sister. He goes, "Hey, how's it going?" He goes, "Yes, my sister." My sister, and that's what he said. And I think it's important for me to talk about because, I was literally watching my sister's lifeless body. Even though I wasn't in that house and this is Ivan's sister, that biologically is related to me and my mother's daughter, and I'm involved in my mother's life more than he ever is. But I'm not trying to take any credit from this because I know this is all going to Ken and Sarah Cooper and the white supremacy. It ain't going to change. The time has already been spent like that. Just because you win $1 million ticket and they tell you a different story what happened, that's not what happened. But they're going to make believe a bunch of stories because that is a detective and that is Sarah Cooper. They feel they're old as fuck now and they want to help Kenneth, who's for the gay community and transgenders, and Madison, because Madison is full-blown white supremacist. Full-blown white supremacist emperor princess, the leader of the whites. They're all going to fight for her. So I think it's important for me to talk about this because he would get upset, and I'd be looking out the window, and he would get upset when other kids would be walking by, and he wouldn't look at them. And he had a very certainty, not aggressive as necessarily. You can see it was kind of frustrating a little bit to him, but a certainty of facial expression, because when he was walking that little girl, because everybody would stare that why is this little girl deformed? She looked, you could see the facial structure was very deformed. The facial structures of girls that are people with Down syndrome, they have a particular type of bone structures and facial features that's very common in all Down syndrome girls and boys. And he would get frustrated because they would just stare at him. And so I would not try to stare too much long at looking out the window at him. But I do remember I would just glance, and I was just looking like damn, I got to be pretty hard, And I remember very distinctly looking out the window and just thinking to myself, man, God is going to reward you, man. You're doing something very holy and spiritual. I was just thinking that the whole time. I remember looking out that window, and I remember just thinking, like, God is going to reward you, man. It's like, in the spiritual sense of life, in the spiritual sense of life, and the spiritual sense of how you honor God, there was no ins and outs about this. That I was looking out that window as I was watching and what he was doing, and I very much saw him as someone that God was going to reward you, like in an afterlife, like he was going to reward you in an afterlife for what you were doing, because he did it with a very beautiful fashion. He wasn't ever. He was very respectful. He never took a joke out of it. He took it pretty serious. Not like serious vengeful. Like he took it very honorable in taking care of that little girl. When he would walk her every day after school, going out on a normal walk. So I'm disturbed by it because I keep hitting my chest with the crucifix. This frequency machine. I'm very disturbed by it when I get flashes of it now, and I think to myself, I know there was a mailman. The mailman knocked on my door and threw a bunch of flashes on the camera in my eyes, so that when I say the word flash, it's a crucifix now, and that's how he cleans up, because he looks exactly like Ken Cooper, and he was acting very aggressive and crazy, knocking on my door trying to deliver mail, and it's the guy that works at the post office. But anyway, I wanted to talk about. I still get these flashes, and that I can't believe that I was watching my lifeless sister, like lifeless there. I mean, totally, like not. He had it completely, like just like she was deceased. But I thought it was important because I remember it was the last few times that I saw him do that, and it was the last time that I remember, and I think that's whenever they put her in a wheelchair, and then it was close, they stopped walking her, I guess, for maybe, I don't know what it was, a couple months. What I can remember, it was a short period after that time that she wasn't walking anymore, and then they put her in a wheelchair, and then I saw her being wheeled away in a wheelchair, and there was no doubt in my mind when I saw her, I knew that I thought that there was something that she wasn't going to maybe be alive very much longer. I just didn't understand, because she wasn't moving in the wheelchair very much at all, and even less than she was, because her body tissue, her muscles looked very unexercised. They looked like she was not getting any physical. All I remember her is using her hands and just doing this, and doing that, like, and it was weird because it looked like she was. I always thought she was like looking at the universe. I know it sounds crazy. I'm not trying to act, rebellious against the Antichrist or whatever it is. That I'm not. When I saw her, it looked like I was looking at the universe. Like she was puzzled at some sort of universe world that we're living in or something. But that's how I always remember is always moving her hands and when she ate food and how she, would try to feed herself. When she fed herself, it didn't look like she could feed herself even properly well. But I think it's important for me to talk about. Ivan can go through the whole stretch of things, tell you all the details, and but being her brother, being her blood-related brother, I don't even know if I can call her my sister necessarily. I don't know what the terminology to add more respect would be because Ivan was there. That was his sister. I was just playing with riding bikes with Ivan all the time and whatnot. I think it's just important, but the tokens do go all to him. And so I thought it was important because just because someone's related to you, just like my mother used to always tell me growing up, your father is the guy that puts food on your table and protects you and cares for you, not the one that lays the seeds. And my mother named me, let me tell you, my mother named me Hector after my biological father's name. Why did she name me after a guy that just showed up and left? Well, because she wanted to honor him, and that's what she wanted to do. And I want to say that when my mother, I know it sounds crazy, she was cooking, and I think my mother kind of got upset at my biological father because she said that your father's the one that takes care of you. My father was putting food on the table or whatever, fighting for us and all this. And my mother's cooking, and she goes, yeah, I don't care. And the reason she does that is because she's thinking, well, okay, well, this guy never showed up again. But it's crazy because when my biological father, I remember, I talk about that Michaela's mother and my mother met up with each other at Albertsons, where I saw President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama came and threatened me when I was there, charging at me. They met up with each other. I don't know how this happened. I am still puzzled how they even came in contact with one another. And I remember him being pissed, like, how women, like he was like, and he walked by me and I talked about this. I didn't say anything, but he looked upset, like, and he, I remember the blonde woman kind of looked at him like, oh, you didn't tell me about that kid? Like, but anyway, I say this because, like, a couple of years later, it was a couple of years later, I was about 5 years old when that happened, 6 years old. It was about a year and a half to 2 years after the whole Michael Jackson, he gave me Happy Meal. My mother got I don't know if she kept a phone call, but she told me, she goes, oye, mira Hector, socks están al cárcel. But she says it in a way, she's talking about my biological father. She's saying, yeah, tu papá está en el cárcel, tus socks están en el cárcel. And she didn't show expression of bitterness, of anger. She was just like, he's, the man isn't there. He's not taking. He must not be taking care of business. He wants to get in trouble or something. And that's how my mother behaved. It wasn't a bitterness and angry, but I remember my mother doing that. She told me that he was in jail. So I think it's important because she used socks as a reference. You go, oh yes, socks están en casa, And so because, that's what my mother used to call socks, because socks sometimes got out of her backyard and got caught by the dog pound, and we had to get him out of jail. Come on, vamos. And so my mother sort of, she figuratively, mentally plays this role of like, come on, we gotta go help your dad, Hector, come on, like a good spirit kind of way. but she's talking about the dogs, but she's really kind of referencing my biological father. I don't know if you're following me this, but this is how my mother's vibe and intention is, that she's sort of going through these types of tunnel visions of emotions. And she's never crying after this. I was like 8 or 9 years old. You know, we go pick up our dog 2-3 times at the dog pound. You know, it's like, you got her out of jail, dog. Come on, Socks, I got you out of jail. But I thought it was important for me to talk about this because hopefully this resonates some more information. Some of this stuff has already been repeated, but I haven't talked about, I don't think, that in graphic details. I was watching my own biological sister's body complete lifeless in front of me. And, you know, what Sarah Cooper did and what Kenneth did at the radio station and broadcasted over the radio station, and they're all doing it now, but it's hard to understand that I'm watching my own sibling, and I understand that that's Ivan's sister, but that doesn't separate the biological part of this, because you reunited Julian with his identical twin. You didn't allow me to reunite with Michaela. And you did definitely now don't want to reunite with that because you want to make sure white supremacy and Kenneth and Sarah Cooper and the Cooper family get it, and they did. So we all make mistakes. Remember, there is a lot of predators out there. But as far as I have anything to say, my mother and I know best, but you have to surrender to the American flag. When you don't surrender to the American flag and the president, when he's giving orders to the whites and to Sarah and Ken, that's what you're going to do. If he told me to throw my dead little sister in the trash can, that's what I have to do, because he gives the orders, or he'll kill me, or he'll harm me, or send his people after me. They are full in control of that. So I thought it was important. My mother doesn't know this because my mother wasn't there in the living room. And I don't even know who Julian was. And even though Julian was laying on the floor and he couldn't look out the window, he was laying on the floor. Julian might be able to tell you something like that. He was even younger than me. And Julian he could have seen this, very likely, on the day before, or, the day before. And I may have said something to Julian when she looked like she was lifeless. I said, dang, I wanted to say something, but I kind of just froze, just looking like, because I'm watching another little kid die, like lifeless. When I talk about lifeless, it was like a doll, like completely just like lifeless, like, and I had seen her throw up a couple of times where she's still moving her legs and putting effort, but then she throws up. And then tries to take footsteps. So that's what I saw. So I thought it was important for me to talk about. Hopefully this resonates. I'll talk about hopefully some things about my mother that I remember. My mother used to make like chile colorado really good, and she used to make some other corn and beef, really good meals. I do miss the smell of my mother's cooking. I miss my mother's cooking. I remember it was weird, her twin tried cooking me enchiladas one day, and I had no idea it wasn't my mother, it was her twin. And I called her and I said, I was living at Charles's house and I was 31 years old, and this guy who worked at a nursing home, and I said, Mom, your enchiladas just don't taste right. It's like, did you change his taste or something? And I don't know if that's what you would consider spiritual connection of mothers to son, or just something isn't right. And I remember them all of a sudden forcing me to take a shit. And I told my mother, not polite, I said, they're really good, but did you try something new, a little bit different in the sauce? I don't know, something that didn't taste quite exactly like I remember as a kid. And I said, maybe it's just me, because maybe taste buds change or something. But I thought I'd talk about that, and but I know there is It is a forfeit loss that I cannot explain the surrenderedness and forfeit of how supreme these parasites were. Because my mother is not in any mental state that's going to be healthy, and they're using her twins to completely burn it to the fucking ground, and they gutted me out and Frankie. Frankie was being raped by 10 homosexual men. He gave my mother a multi-million-dollar house, and he made it about Ken and Sarah Cooper and Kenneth at the radio station and white supremacy, and it was all their people that went after me and Frankie and my mother. And obviously you didn't want to go at least, and I'm going to talk about another video. They started setting up stages of my biological father. There's a guy by the name of Sal. He used to work for, and that's a weird name, but he was a Mexican guy, worked at Ridgeways, and they trained him to try to be he was my new manager when I worked at Ridgeways at PBK when they had me stationed. And I remember this guy coming over. He had gotten hired about 3 months after me working there, and he had hired Sal as a manager to go look at these other places. And I remember Sal, and he was a Mexican guy, and he kind of looked like my biological father, but a little bit, maybe an extra 40 pounds of weight, and a little scrawnier. And this guy, if those don't know Buddy Giles, I think it was Giles, but this guy named Buddy, and the people in the office were racist as a motherfucker. Like, there were black people. There was a black guy that used to get treated like a. I don't even want to. I'm telling you, if you had cameras in this fucking place, you knew that this guy was called like inches from calling this guy a nigger. Like, okay, so now he hit me in my chest again, and he's directing right there to the window, or to the coffin right there. So I thought it was important for me to talk about, because for those that want to look into this, I want to make a real thorough speech about this. There was a guy by the name of Sal. I don't know if his last name was Rodriguez, but Sal, and he worked at Ridgeways. 3 months after me working there, Buddy and these other they were all white there, and the owner, Buddy, and then the other guy, he's not even alive anymore. They were very vengeful at me in a way that was very retaliating. He goes, "I'm going to go to McDonald's. You want me to get you something?" He goes, "Here, I got you a cone." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And he goes, "Thank you!" Like, charged at me. Like, and he was doing it because he was protecting Michael Jackson, and he was retaliating. I had no idea about the situation. So I wanted to talk about something about this, because when I was working there, this guy, Mexican guy, they were not only kind of sort of punking him down, like downplaying him, because they figured out my biological father was still alive, and they were trying to downplay him and then turn my father, who did raise me, against me. And the way that Buddy did this is that I was at work, and he comes over, he comes over like he's in charge. Yeah, let me tell you something. All right, look, I'm going to go put you at PBK. Sal's going to be your, he's going to take over. He's going to take over you and the other offices, and he's going to watch over you, okay? I got to go. Bye. And so he would train me with some of the other people that worked at Ridgeways, that you see Raymond Palomo? Raymond Palomo's dying, and he's going to throw you over it, and then bye-bye. You see how gay community works, gay power? That's exactly what they were doing. So I think it's important for me to talk about this, because nobody knows about these stories that they knew. Because when I was at Ridgeways, is whenever, within a month or two of me working at Ridgeways, I only worked there a total of about 4 to 5 months. No more than 5 months that I worked there. And it was right after my bone marrow transplant. And it was in 2007. And, no, I'm sorry, it was in 2008. It was 2008. So when I went there, when I went over to go work, when I was at work, there was I talked about that. He came into PBK one day, Sal, after working there about a month, And he looked at me like he was entirely being punked out and scared of Buddy. Like these white guys that were over at Ridgeways, like really fucking scared. And he remember him looking at me, and he was just kind of like nerve-wracking, like he really needed the job and money, like really bad. Like he was a desperate Mexican, and he was taking advantage of that. But these white guys in the office were. There was only 2 white guys, Buddy, the owner, and his salesperson. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because they started retaliating me at the very beginning of that. They started notifying these pigs and all these people, and they started coming after me for it. Michaela, you're going to want to know about that. And I talked about that the first 3 months that I was there, 2 months, I had to go to Metro Care Services because I didn't have any money. My electricity was getting cut off. And I was at work. And so when I got off, I took a day off, or I think I called in sick or something. I went to Metro Care Services or on a weekend or something. And I remember going in there, seeing if I can get assistance for my rent, because my electricity was about to get cut off. And I said, my electricity is about to get cut off. He goes, what kind of car you drive? Well, my name's Hector too. And then he looks at he looks at the computer, and he does this. He goes, well, what we can do is we can offer, maybe $8 or $9. You can buy some eggs or some milk. And like, because they found out I was driving, a $7,000 car, and they were like, well, these people here that don't even have a car, and you come and asking for us. But I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I thought they had the ability to do that to help people, but apparently I guess not. So this guy, when I walked in there, his name was Hector, and they knew about my biological father name being Hector. But this guy was Mexican, and I remember him sort of like playing both balances, which I can tell this with Mexican people, especially since my family's Mexican. They're going to take an interest, more caring, and more reserved toward my side. If it's a white guy, it's going to be less and cutthroat. And I know that immediately. So I could tell that the guy was gay, but I could tell that he was just trying to sort of sort things out when he was looking at the computer screen and be like, and then look at me and talk to me, because he needed to downgrade my biological father so that he can upgrade my father who raised me, Raymond Palomo. And this is the mentality conditioning that they're doing, because the farther that they can dwindle time and credibility and interest toward the people that I was around in life, the more they can dwindle away the $175,000 my dad left behind before he died, right after he died. And then Dream Makeover shows up, or whatever it is, that bought my mother the house, and they took everything. The Frankie rapes and everything. So I think it's important for me to talk about. Michaela, you're going to want to know this. There was a guy there by the name of Sal. I don't know if he's still alive, though, but he drove a pickup truck. There's another thing I want to say about this. There used to be a black guy. He looked like Mr. Clean. You ever seen the Mr. Clean bottle liquid stuff you buy at the store? He looked just like him, but he was black. He was just like him, shaved head, everything, same body build, but black, but not muscular, kind of just bulky, fat, kind of. And he used to drive a purple truck. He didn't have very much money. He was just a delivery person. And Buddy was always fucking playing this racist shit with this guy when I was working there. I mean, this guy was fucking racist. When I talk about fucking racist, this guy, I got lucky I got hired there. This guy was racist. Him and these were racist people. Fucking big time fucking racist. And I talked to this one guy, and the delivery guy, and he was like, man, do you know that guy Buddy, man, he got me doing all this. This guy's racist as hell, man. I'm already looking for another job. And he would sucker this guy out. He would sucker this guy out like he was, if you saw how he talked to him and how he behaved around him, he treated him like he was talking to him like he was a nigger. Like the word, like that's how he talked to him. And it wasn't like an employee. And I remember him being upset, and he was like, because Buddy started to really jack with him and really mess around with him really bad, real bad. Now, this is right after my bone marrow transplant. There was a woman by the salesperson there that worked there by the name of Kathy. She looked a lot like, almost like very physically exactly like Madison, but skinnier. Same hair, complexion, eyes, and she was a straight woman, beautiful woman. But I wanted to say this because there was another guy that showed up, and he was like seemed very wealthy. But he looked half white, half Mexican. He had black hair, and he looked a little bit like Kenneth. And I want to say he drove like a brand new Pontiac Thunderbird, I think it was. And I remember this guy. I remember this guy. And he was like, you could tell he was raised entirely by a white family. I don't think he knew how to speak any Spanish, but he was entirely raised by a white family. And he had kind of like a greenish, bluish, light-colored eyes, and but he had black hair and tan skin, like pretty heavy, dark skin. So I thought I would say this because I remember this behavior going in and out about how I'm trying to protect Kenneth, the radio station, and all this other shit. Because guess who's broadcasting Superior? So when you're giving my mother all this money and all these other things, they're all retaliating me because that's how they retaliate against my mother. There's 10 homosexual men that raped my brother. And this is all about covering it up and working in teams. They know what's going on. So I thought I'd make a video and talk about some other things. But like I said, I talked about this topic that my sister was lifeless body. And this guy downstairs just now changed directions and he hit the window in this area and it electrocuted me from my back, and it felt like they shot my back with this frequency instead of my chest. I'm going to show you how they're going to justify this mentally by brainwashing me and everything that they're doing. You can see how this looks like a coffin and where it's placed. You see where this crucifix is, right? Well, if you look very closely, they know all the items and everything. They know what's going on inside my apartment. There's cameras and all this. But if you look very closely here, I have all these electronic devices to sort of display some of the frequencies that they're using to beat the shit out of me, use it to whatever it is. I don't know if these, I'm pretty sure it probably has some of these parts in it and this frequency device that they're using, but this also represents a coffin, a dead body of a little girl, my dad's sister. That's why the guy electrocuted me or shoot that throbbing frequency into my back just a little bit ago, and I just talked about this in this area because it resembles, look, electronic devices, your dead sister, she doesn't belong to you here, she belongs back there. And then they play these 6 psychological games, and it's this old guy downstairs that's doing it. But I thought it was important for me to talk about because this is how they'll justify raping me and exchanging my dead sister for these electronic devices in her burial process. And that's how the guy downstairs is going to do it, and the orders that he's being told to do as well. But I thought I'd make a video on that. I'll make some other videos about some other topics.